This is the Prostate Pit Stop. One man's journey, everyone's fight. With Keith Smith and Matt McCleary. Sponsored by the Ferry Project. Visit our website, ferryproject.org.uk. Well, hello and welcome to the Prostate Pit Stop. I'm Matt.
Hi, and I'm Keith.
And today we back chatting with Keith all about his prostate cancer journey and, of course, his recovery. Hi, Keith.
Hi. Yes, it's actually going really well, Matt. So I'm really pleased to say that I've been very pleasantly surprised at how well the recovery is going. And saying it's easy is not quite the right word, but it's been better than I expected. I'm recovering much more quickly than I expected.
How far along are we into the recovery? So when was your operation?
So the operation was March the 7th, so it's now just over 6 weeks. So at 6 weeks, I'm not certain what I was expecting, but they told me that after the operation, it would be about 3 months before I was pretty well back to normal. And actually, I think I'm well on the way there. Well, one of the key things for me, Matt, is about it, and for my recovery, mental recovery of what it is. I personally like having baths rather than showers, and as I was going through the wounds that they did to actually get the prostate out, were healing, but they were healing more slowly than I wanted, and because they were still healing, they didn't want me to have a bath because get them wet and soak it, and it soaks the scab off and all the rest of it that means that they don't heal as quickly. So they were asking me to have showers, but a week ago I got permission to have a bath. So I've been having some baths since then. Yeah, and it's funny how small things like that actually can become quite big things about getting life back to normal and feeling that things are getting better. So that was good. So I started having baths last week, and I've driven for the first time. So I've had a couple of short trips out. They said it was probably wise not to drive until I could be certain I could control the car and certainly do the emergency stop without hurting myself. But I've been able to do that, and so I've driven on 3 short journeys. So life is starting to return more to normal, which is really pleasant and nice to be able to do. And it's, as I say, it certainly helps your mind. It makes you feel like you're getting better, rather than before the operation, it was all a bit worried about how things just going to get worse and worse.
For want of a better word, how is the toilet training going?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I would say I'm definitely not incontinent. I can control myself pretty well. I'm sure the ladies listening to the podcast would just smile knowingly. It's just the surprise about, what do they call it? Stress incontinence. So if you move suddenly in a particular way, and I'm still trying to work out what it is, I might get a little leak, or if I'm not careful, when I cough, or other times. So what I find is I will do a couple of spots of urine into my underwear when I'm least expecting it, and I suppose that's part of it, isn't it? I'm not really expecting it. What I'm not doing is wetting myself, if that makes sense. So that is really different, because that's not something I'm used to at all. Certainly, I never used to just do tiny drops of wee. But okay, it's getting there, and I have to keep practicing my pelvic floor. It's much harder to remind yourself now, because as things are getting better, you tend to forget about doing exercises on things. So I have to remind myself, because that's the key. So I know that that's the answer. But yes, so it's nowhere near as bad as it could be. It is very different to what it was before, but then it would be. So. But all in all, yes, it's not stopping me living. And if in the light of absolute honesty, so you can get these things, tenor pads for men. And so if I'm going out to something where I'm going to be away from toilet facilities, like on a journey, because I've done a couple of longer journeys now with my wife driving, or events where I'm going to be in somebody's house for a few hours and I'm concerned I might dribble. Then you can put one of these pads on and that absorbs the dribble. So I'm learning to use pads, but not very often. So, yeah, but it is a very different way of living. And, yes, as I say, I'm sure the women listening to this would smile and go, yes, now you know what it feels like. So,
in a previous episode where we talked about pelvic floor exercises,
yes.
we popped a link to some suggested pelvic floor exercises for men in the show notes. So we'll do the same thing again, for those.
Yeah, it's a good idea. It is important. I definitely know. I notice the difference when I am doing my pelvic floor exercises and when I'm not. So I'm assuming that sometime in the not too distant future, I hope, they'll get to the stage where they're keeping the fitness levels up, the muscles, like if you do other exercises. But I'll have to wait and see. It's still early days. So that is a bit of a challenge. But it isn't unduly affecting my life. The wounds are healed really well now, and it's really quite impressive the fact that they were able to operate in the way they did. I can imagine that once they healed properly, there'll be very little scarring at all, which is, to be frank, quite astonishing.
So let's just talk about the disjointed nature between our heads or our brains and our bodies when we're recovering from something like this. Because I know when I was recovering from chemo, they reached a point when my brain was going, "Hey, this is great. I'm fine. Everything's back to normal. Let's crack on the way we were doing before." And my body kind of went, "Oh no, you can't do that. Not now, not yet." So have you found a similar thing? Because mine was more sort of chemo treatment rather than an operation, but you've had an operation. So have you found a similar thing, or was it a bit different?
Yeah. Well, certainly your brain is ahead of your body. There's no two ways about that. So I feel I could do something and then run out of steam. The thing that I've been saying to my wife is that it's interesting in a sense. It's not that you run out of steam gradually. What I find is I can do this, I can do it, everything's fine, and then suddenly I go, actually, no, I can no longer do this. And it's just the feeling that I need now to stop and sit down, and I'm feeling really tired and so on. And at the moment, I can't really judge how long that is because it changes for different things. It's like if I'm just talking to somebody very relaxed, I can do that for a little while now, quite a while. If actually I'm concentrating and putting something into it, then I run out of steam much more quickly. So I had my first type of meeting, if you like, because I'm used to the job I did being CEO of Ferry. My whole life was based around meetings where you discussed topics, not just have a chat. And I had my first one. I've had two now over the last week. And in both cases, after the meeting, I felt far more tired than just chatting to people. And, the first meeting I had, I actually had very little energy for the whole of the next day, and it was only an hour-long meeting. Yes, it is really quite different. Your head is definitely well ahead. One's head is definitely well ahead of one's body. It's just being sensible, isn't it? And not pushing through. Historically, I would have pushed through when I had a cold. I used to go, "Oh, no, I can do this. I can do it." But now I'm trying to be sensible. I don't want to set myself back. That's the key thing. I don't want to make the recovery longer.
One phrase that I'd heard a lot before my treatment and recovery was this whole "listen to your body," and I sort of was like, "Oh yeah, whatever." But then when I was actually going through it, when I was sort of in that recovery phase, and especially when my brain sort of hopped ahead of where my body was actually at, I was like, ah, this is what they mean. Listen to your body. Oh, look, there's a little twinge or there's a little sign there. Actually, that means I have to stop, or I have to sit down, or I have to eat something now.
Yes.
Rather than just sort of saying, oh, I can push through, or whatever what one would normally do. It's sort of like, take time, listen to your body, because it's needing to call the shots. Is that the right words?
Yeah.
It's needing to do what it needs to do.
Yeah, and I totally agree, Matt. One of the challenging things actually is my wife's done an incredible amount for me over the last 6 weeks, and I look at that, and sometimes there's a part of me which feels guilty, and I tell myself, don't feel guilty. It's just silly. You've got to do this. And she's not said anything at all, and she's not complained or anything. She's just got on with things and having to do all the washing up and all the cooking and everything else. And there's a bit of me which is going, no, you do the washing up or whatever. And I'm gradually being able to do that more. But it's, as you say, you've got to do it at the right speed. So you might be able to do something, and like I was saying, suddenly I just feel, oh, I can't do this anymore. And you've got to just admit that you can't do it and stop, because otherwise I don't know what the consequences are, because I haven't pushed myself through it. But certainly any physical exercise, I'm fully aware that I could easily hurt myself. And I think if my head's telling me I've got to stop, I best stop, really, because I don't want to break something. I don't want to. I don't know, but I just want to. I want to recover. So I'm trying to be sensible and not feel guilty about not working as hard as I could do, and just communicate. I'm talking to my wife quite a lot, trying to tell her how I feel and how I am, and I think she's pleasantly surprised that I'm recovering quickly, because she's had a number of operations in her life, and some of those she's recovered quickly from, and some she's recovered. It's taken her a longer period of time, and so she understands a lot better than I think I understood when she was recovering from her operations. So
at this point in your recovery, then, what helpful advice would you give listeners? What's working for you? Perhaps from like someone visiting or offering, I don't know, sympathy, or wanting to show they care. What is really helpful to you at the moment, and what really isn't?
So I suppose what's really helpful is, don't assume, if you're visiting, don't assume how the other person is going to be, the person who's recovering. Allow them to tell you how they are, and if they're saying they're okay, and as long as people are being honest, then fine. But if they say I need to stop now, accept that they need to stop. So don't, because we can. I don't know about you, but when I visit some people who are poorly, there are times when I think, oh, well, I'd better do this for them or that for them, and that certainly when people do that for me, there are some things I'm very glad they're doing, but there are some things which I think, oh, I wish I hadn't done that. I could do that myself, and I want to do it myself to feel that bit of independence. So allow the person who's recovering to dictate whatever the pace is. So if they want to do something, let them do it. But if they don't want to do it, then fine, help them and support them with it. But don't assume, because the assumptions are the bit that become annoying. Either somebody's mothering you, if you like, overdoing it, or actually you could have done with a helping hand there, and they didn't offer, and that's just as bad. So I think that would be the key thing.
And I guess that's a two-way thing as well. It's that communication, the person who's recovering actually feeling empowered to say, this is how I'm feeling, can you help me? Yes. Or leave that, I can do that quite fine. And the other person to also be hearing that and sort of saying, would you like me to help you with this, rather than just doing it? Yeah, that communication.
It is, and that helps, doesn't it? Because then everybody's comfortable, because you just know where you are. But and also being prepared, I suppose, like I was saying, is being prepared to start something, and actually, when you've overestimated what you're capable of, halfway through being prepared to say, I'm sorry, Anna, my wife's called Anna. I need you to finish this dinner off, or I need you to finish the pots, because actually I need to sit down now, and not feeling bad about doing that. Or if somebody else is visiting, I have said to people, I'm sorry, you need to go now. I need to just stop. So as long as everybody's comfortable with that and not offended by it, then that's the best way. That's really positive. And yeah, that's where you know your friends are, aren't they? When you can be open and honest, and it doesn't matter.
No, it's great. It's been really good catching up. We'll be back soon with another installment of the Prostate Pit Stop, catching up with Keith on his prostate journey. So join us then, subscribe, like, and share, because, this conversation might be really valuable and it might help someone out. It might even save someone's life. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Prostate Pit Stop, sponsored by the Ferry Project. Make sure you subscribe and share.